Okay, I'm joined by Keith Smith of Surgery Center of Oklahoma. He's sort of a pioneer in the free market healthcare realm. And if you would, Keith, sort of introduce yourself and tell us about what you do and how that's different from healthcare as we know it.
Well, I'm an anesthesiologist. I've been in practice, private practice, since 1990. Went into medicine with the idea that I would be involved in exchanges with patients that were mutually beneficial, that I would provide a service for them that they would value. And I found out very early on that was not really what I was aiding and abetting. The hospitals where I worked were charging patients just insane amounts for procedures that were very routine and simple, and increasingly physicians were not able to secure what they needed to take care of patients in the best way. Because the hospitals where we worked were trying to maximize their profit. So I realized I was involved in a system that was just not really the best thing for patients, and it didn't feel right. So the idea of providing reasonably priced, high quality care seemed like just a fantasy. But it became reality in 1997 when Dr. Steve Lantier, a like-minded anesthesiologist, and I took over control of a struggling facility, and we opened it with the idea that we would not only take accountability for the medical experience of the patient, but also for their financial journey. So our mission was simple. We would never accept money from or deal with the government. And our other mission was to provide the highest quality care possible. And then we were going to make sure patients knew what they were going to pay us prior to their arrival.
A novel concept.
Yeah, yes. Whether they had insurance or not. So we started quoting all-inclusive prices in 1997 over the phone, so surgeon, anesthesia facility, pathology, everything, with no concept of how radical that really was. And we did this for years. We grew. We were very successful. We were despised by the insurance companies, by the hospitals. It was we were quite an eyesore, quite an embarrassment for them.
I kind of get the hospital despising you. I don't quite understand the insurance company thing, because you would think, I mean, logic would dictate, hey, this guy is cheaper. That's less money out of our pocket. Is there more to that story?
Yeah, imagine being puzzled for years, more than a decade, by that question. Why does cheaper and better not appeal to an insurance carrier? That troubled me. That kept me up at night. There was no explanation for it. We were cheaper and we were better. I'm a pediatric anesthesiologist, and Steve Lantier is too. We had anesthetized the who's who of this whole region and their children. And, the quality, all the Division I athletes came to our place. The Oklahoma City Thunder players came to Surgery Center of Oklahoma. I mean, quality-wise, we were top of the heap. And price-wise, we were as reasonably priced as anyone in the United States. But that was the question. Why don't insurance carriers want cheaper and better? They wanted no part of it. And it wasn't until I posted all of our all-inclusive prices on a website in 2009 that people in the industry had a crisis of conscience and began to tell me things. And this story and these bits and pieces kind of came together. The answer I actually created a 2-minute video called the $100 Aspirin for anybody that wants to, after I say what I'm going to say, if they want to go review it. But the answer is insurance companies make more money if initially what they start with is a very high charge, a very high bill. So this giant hospital bill, let's say $100,000, gets discounted by an insurance company down to, let's say, $20,000. This insurance carrier will then claim that they have saved whoever is the owner or participant of that insurance policy. They'll claim they saved them $80,000.
Now, who's facilitating the discount? Is the discount being negotiated between the insurance carrier and the end user?
Yes. So, in the hospital, basically. So a hospital generates a $100,000 bill. Insurance company discounts it, pays $20,000, and the insurance carrier then can ride in on their white horse and say, "We saved, the self-funded company, the employer, whoever. We saved you $80,000." Well, what's going on behind the curtain is the insurance carrier charges a commission for those savings, so they actually receive a payment from the employer, from the self-funded employer, to the extent that those savings were achieved. So if you think through that, the insurance carrier would much rather have had a $200,000 bill.
Yes. Yes. Because 20% of a big number is more than 20% of a small number.
Right. So when I posted that a knee arthroscopy was $3,740, or that a knee replacement was $17,956, that's an opportunity foregone for the insurance carriers. They wanted no part of that. Furthermore, the insurance carrier would pay the hospital $20,000 when my all-inclusive price for the same service was probably $5,000. And so this was a question that haunted.
So if you're profiting at that level, they're certainly profiting at a level 3 times that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm not losing money at charging 1/10 of what the so-called not-for-profit hospitals charge for this same service. So this was a question, why does the industry not want cheaper and better? It's a question that haunted me, and the answer to it was not clear until many years after we opened.
Once you understand that this is the dynamic, when you start calling that out, are you getting pushback from them?
Well, we filed insurance claims until about 2011. So I launched the website in 2009. And up to that point, we had sustained almost nonstop attacks from the insurance industry, the hospital industry. They weaponized our state health department against us. I spent a lot of time at the state capitol here in Oklahoma City defending our right to even exist as a business. But because we did not accept government money, I had a lot of credibility with the legislators because I didn't want anything from them. I wasn't coming in asking for some kind of greasy favor. I was just asking, will you leave us alone and let the market competition do what it does? So, yeah, I mean, we got a lot of pushback as long as we were filing claims. Interestingly, in about 2011, I stopped filing out-of-network claims. I just stopped doing it. We would see patients that had insurance, but their deductible was higher than our all-inclusive price. And as a courtesy, we would file a claim for that patient, and then not accept assignment of their benefits. So if any payment was generated, it would go directly to the patient. And if it came to us, we would send it to the patient because we'd already been paid by them. Well,
wow. This is so mind-blowing because no one would ever expect this. I mean, when you go to the emergency room because something happens to you, you got an open artery and, this has to be dealt with right now. You know what's going to happen to you. You're going to get trickling hospital bills for months, and it's going to be some astronomical price and not bearing any relationship to the value of service rendered.
Yeah, and there are even emergency room hospitals that have copied my model, where now, you walk into an emergency room and they figure, you're going to meet one of 5 levels of severity, and so we're going to have level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and put a price on each one of those levels of severity. So, the market competition is such a beautiful thing, and human beings find solutions to problems if the regulatory state will allow them to do it.
What happens is that the regulatory state stacks up a bunch of regulation over the head of you, and then you can't get the product that you want on the bottom end, and then they call it market failure.
Well, that's true. The only thing I would add to that is the regulatory state is completely captured. So, the big dogs in the industry actually request these regulations many times because they know they're a big enough dog to comply, but the smaller kind of underdog upstarts could never comply with some of the regulations that are requested.
Okay. This is interesting that you're mentioning this. I would like to go into the origin of this whole not-for-profit healthcare system and understand the discounts that we were talking about earlier. That's not only a benefit that the insurance company gets, but it also goes on the ledger of the hospital that they then use when they file some report later and get a dish payment from the government. Is that not true?
Yeah, you've done your homework. So the insurance company, as we've stated, is inclined to provide these discounts to and the larger the discount they can extend, the higher their commission on the savings achieved. The hospitals, you wonder, why would a hospital play along with this? What's in it for them? Well, the hospital is happy to accept an 80% discount on their bill because they need all the red ink that they can find to justify the fiction of their not-for-profit status. So, they will say, and there's an administrator in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who regularly takes out full-page ads that tell everyone that looks at this ad how much uncompensated care that they provided to the community in the state over a period of time. And it's in the millions of dollars.
Yes, and this makes them look, it's a monster virtue signal.
Yes, it is. So, we provide millions of dollars of care, of uncompensated care. Well, in my early days, when I was in a lot of battles, some of which were public, I was nose to nose with a hospital administrator that I've since become friends with, but he was normally very close-vested and didn't show his hand, but he lost his temper talking to me, and he asked me a question meant to completely devastate me and my argument. And his question was this: what percentage of your revenue is uncompensated care? And the question didn't even make sense to me. And so I was speechless. I didn't even know how to answer that. And he felt like he had scored some points because I didn't know what to say. But I walked away, and every day I thought, that was such a strange question. And he's a smart guy. What did he mean? What percentage of my revenue? How could uncompensated care be revenue? And compensated care is care for which you are not compensated. That turned out not to be the case. And that was a piece of this puzzle. Uncompensated care is a revenue item. And the way it works is the hospital bills $100 for an aspirin. They get paid $20. They claim that they lost $80. That goes into this bucket of uncompensated care that gets shipped off to Uncle Sam, and then the hospital receives a kickback to the extent that they claim that they provided care for which they were not compensated.
Is it 100% of that number, or is it
No, there's a formula, and the way they do it is they stick it onto future Medicare payments, and it's called the disproportionate share hospital payment. So to the extent that hospitals claim these losses, to the extent that they claim that they provided care for which they were not compensated, to the extent that they claim that billing $100 for an aspirin and being paid $20 means they lost $80, when you and I both know how many aspirins we can buy for $20. They
can buy them cheaper because they're buying them by the truckload.
Yeah, so that's how they maintain the fiction of their not-for-profit status with all of this fake red ink. That's how they get a kickback to the extent that they claim these losses. And they need to maintain this not-for-profit fiction so they don't pay tax. The Surgery Center of Oklahoma is a for-profit enterprise, and we make money charging 1/10 what these so-called not-for-profit hospitals do. We would love to not pay tax. That would allow us to cut our prices in half. So,
wow.
Well, yeah, I mean.
So we're really getting ripped by these people. So everybody who has, as we do, I'm in Grants Pass, Oregon, we have a nice little hospital complex here that keeps adding a wing on here and there. And I call it the palace that exists for the purpose of extracting the last few dollars from your pocket as you leave this world. And I think that is wrong. If we had a system similar to yours, if you were granted nonprofit status and you didn't have to pay taxes, you just said that you could do it for half of what you're already doing it for, which is cheap. It's cheap by comparison. Yeah. So I should be able to then have cheaper insurance because the cost of insurance is only to offset what they have to pay out to people like you who are charging what the value of the service is and not 10 times that.
Yeah, we pay federal income tax, we pay state income tax, we pay property tax, we pay sales tax.
And they pay none of that.
No. So, that's the biggest line item in our budget, other than payroll, is the tax that we pay. So, yeah, I would be able to cut way back on what I charge if we had the same advantage the hospitals did. Years ago, Tom Coburn, who was a senator from Oklahoma, who was really a pretty hilarious guy, he was talking to a hospital administrator who brought Surgery Center of Oklahoma up during their conversation. And the administrator said, it's just not a level playing field. It's not fair what Surgery Center of Oklahoma is doing. It's not a level. And Tom Coburn, in a classic Tom Coburn minute, and he told me the story in my office one day. Coburn looked at him and said, you're right. They pay tax. And that was the end of the conversation.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They don't want to go down that road. Isn't that funny? So here, let's cover a little bit of how you guys are different from the major hospital systems. Here is your website, and this is when you go to the website. Right under the main page, it has a tab to click on for surgery prices, and basically on this page, you can. Let me bring it up here. You can click on any one of these dots. So just for fun, let's look at the knee and select the procedure, and let's go down to total knee replacement. That's $17,679. Now, my wife just had a knee replacement here about 3 weeks ago. And we dealt with somebody who was comparable in the pricing here, and was a free market healthcare kind of guy. However, obviously, we didn't want to travel to Utah, which is what we did from Grants Pass. We would have rather been able to have that done here. So. But my wife had a hip replacement a couple of years before and had been going to this orthopedic center and explained to them who did her surgery, and they were very interested, like they had just seen a new electronic gadget. These doctors, I think they're kind of enamored with the idea in many cases of how do we do this sort of thing ourselves. So we asked them about getting a price on having her knee done, and they didn't know what to do. They were like totally perplexed, and we kept checking back with them. Oh yeah, we'll get back to you on that. Finally, they did, and it was $28,000, which is and change, which basically was double what we paid.
Well, so bad though for me.
Right. I thought, for an ad hoc thing, for them to just whip this out, it was a good effort. But you could probably help them with that, couldn't you?
You bet. So here is the secret proprietary sauce. This is how I put prices together, and I create probably 5 new surgical bundles every day, and we continue to expand our list. The first thing I do is I ask the surgeon, how much do you want? And that's a real head scratcher for them when I ask them that for the very first time, and eventually they get pretty good at it, because ultimately your answer comes down to time and expertise. So,
and they're probably ultimately making more than they would if they were doing this for a hospital.
I'm assuming. Whatever answer they give me is always too low. So I just tell them, if you're happy with that, you'll be happy with what I think I've got budgeted for you. As an anesthesiologist, I bill for my time. That's not 100% correct, but it's mostly correct. So I have to give some idea about, what is 30 minutes of my time worth as an anesthesiologist. And then the surgery center, I treat just like a general contractor would, as time and materials. And we try to keep a razor thin margin on the facility, not trying to make Surgery Center of Oklahoma as an institution a profit center. We want the people providing the care to be paid handsomely, as they should be. With the facility not hitting a grand slam, just a base hit. So that's how I do it. And you add those things up and you come up with a number, and invariably it's 1/5 or 1/10 of what a hospital would normally charge. Now,
so is that what is reflected on the prices on this page, which is the Atlas Billing Company?
So this is really the good news. We want to get our pitchforks and storm the industry and show how terrible they are. The really good news is that there are hospitals in the United States that really want to participate in this movement, and they don't know how. They legitimately don't know how. Now, there are others out there that have worked so hard to lock in their market share, that they just want to fleece everyone to the extent that they can. And those are the really bad black hat actors. But there are facilities and hospitals that do want to be competitive, and they want to quote a price that will keep you and your wife from traveling to Utah or Oklahoma City.
I wish I would have known about this before then. I only started studying up on this when I wanted to book you as a guest, and I listened to a bunch of podcasts, and I went, hey, wait a minute. I skipped a step in the process. But the problem is people don't know this stuff.
That's
and
right.
There isn't really an infrastructure out there that's vested in making sure that people do know this.
Well, I'm not a businessman. I'm an anesthesiologist, but my friends that are businessmen have told me the smartest thing I've done was not post a website with all-inclusive prices. The smartest thing I did was Atlas Billing Company. So if you put yourself in the shoes of the patient as a consumer is not going to want to pay the surgeon, the anesthesiologist, and the facility and the pathologist separately. They're going to want to write one check. Atlas Billing is essentially, to simplify it, is a clearinghouse to which those payments can be made. But when I established Atlas, it never occurred to me that there would be entities, hospitals, imaging centers, other surgery centers that would not be able to wrap their minds around how to implement a payment bundle. Atlas Billing Company helps hospitals cope with patients like you who come in and ask how much. And so I will teach a facility or a hospital how to answer that question. What steps do you go through? And then Atlas Billing Company will invoice and receive payment and then pay that hospital, anesthesia group, and surgical group wherever they are in the United States. And we are training wheels for some who then kick us to the curb after they figured out on their own.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they?
Or they can continue to use and utilize the Atlas Billing Company service.
Yeah, if they don't like bookkeeping, they can have you do it.
That's right. And I've got a couple of high-powered CPAs that help me with this, because this for me was an idea, but its implementation has required real detailed focused sort of individuals. So that's what Atlas Billing is. So Atlas Billing is really it gives any facility the option of putting their toe in the water in this free market movement and getting started. And that's how I recommend everyone get started in this, is baby steps.
I think it's hard for people, I mean, if you went to school, maybe you're not an entrepreneur, maybe you're not a super industrious guy. You just want to put in your time and do the job that you trained for. And you don't want to deal with this. It's kind of a headache. And there's a fear of, what might happen if you do this. But this framework is a lot of help to them. I think this is a great service, and I'm going to proselytize this big time. I have tenants that are doctors. I own a 10,000 square foot medical office building, and I've lost doctors to the hospital, where they, it's too much trouble for them to do anymore. And so they just become a hospitalist. And I've seen what doctors have to deal with in terms of billing, and there's just a lot of headaches involved. And this route is a great way to go. And I'm very proud that I was one of I was the first building in town that had a direct primary care doctor. That jumped into that pool, and it turned out very good for her. She got more subscribers than she could deal with, and so it was a very good deal for her and a good deal for everybody else. But primary care and your bailiwick, which is the surgery center, that's a different, those should be different ball games. I should be able to have a catastrophic policy, and I should be able to bank my money all year long and maybe pay the premiums on that. But if everybody was, number one, taking care of themselves better than they are, and I hope that that's in the future, and that the costs involved with surgeries that become necessary are lower, then everybody has more of their own money, and more money for individuals means more human autonomy that should be in our hands and not in the hands of, some, corporation or government.
Yeah, I think the way for physicians to get kind of a 10,000-foot bird's eye view of the status of the industry, and the way I see it, increasingly, more and more people believe that this industry is not salvageable, that it is not fixable, that the government has so contaminated this cesspool with its favors through the regulatory state that unwinding that is unimaginably hard. So the beautiful thing about living in the United States is there still is this spirit of entrepreneurship, and there is this willingness to embrace market discipline. And so what has happened is there's now a very large, vibrant group of sticker-shocked buyers, whether they are individuals that have no insurance, individuals with extremely high deductibles, or if they are a member of a cost-sharing ministry, or if they are a beneficiary of a self-funded health plan. Those are all very price-conscious, sticker-shocked buyers. And for the physician or the surgery center or the imaging facility or the hospital to reject and refuse to accommodate one of those people like you that asks how much, they are increasingly at risk of losing a larger and larger book of their business and patients. So I would encourage everyone to look perhaps at the Free Market Medical Association, which is a great resource where you can really get your finger on the pulse of how this alternative path of purchasing medical services is progressing.
So on that website, are there a list of participating physicians or?
Yes. So there's a tab on that website that says Shop Health, and the facilities that, and it, we can't update it fast enough to be accurate, but that's a great resource.
I appreciate what you do. People who have the cojones to wade into this when no one else has, and make their way on their own. You're the Elon Musks of the medical world here, and I think and it's clear that you care about people, and that clearly is not the case in some hospital system that wants to charge you 10 times what something is worth and has no conscience about that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of embracing market discipline. That's what makes us pay attention to the buyer and their preferences, and making sure that they're satisfied with their experience at Surgery Center of Oklahoma, that they consider it a value, that they would tell everyone they know about their experience, and that if they need care in the future, they would return. So without market discipline, then you can provide and serve bad food and still have customers. That's why hospitals buy physician practices, so that they don't have to compete. All of their referrals are baked in.
Yes.
We don't subscribe to that method. We think you've got to put your quality out there and let the market judge you.
So when you do something like that, aren't you at risk of losing your hospital privileges and perhaps having to be surgery center only? Are you going to be at odds with the hospital system there, where you won't be able to have access and you won't get referrals out of their emergency room or things of this nature? I mean, that's part of what makes it hard for a doctor to pull the trigger on this.
Yeah, there has been some retaliation against surgeons there's 129 of them that work at this facility. But there's been some retaliation against them very quietly, though, because the hospitals get in a lot of trouble if they begin to what's called economically credential surgeons and physicians. If they punish a surgeon by curtailing their privileges, but it's really for economic reasons, there have been some very large lawsuit settlements for that kind of activity. Physicians are still the underdog in that fight, but I think hospitals are very, very careful, and hospitals cannot afford to lose talent off their staff. And so if it's a very talented surgeon, and that's all I work with, they're not about to kick them off their staff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I hope to arm some people with leverage, which they can use to get a better deal in their local area. Or to go to a facility like yours, because, well, I just think it's wrong. If we don't have access to I don't want to say cheap healthcare, but reasonably priced healthcare that we can afford, then, I mean, I understand now there may be some pricey procedures, but they won't be more than 2 or 3 years worth of your premiums that you're paying for health insurance right now, which is why after Obamacare took over, I just said, the hell with it. I refuse to pay those prices.
So, I should have told you, when I launched the website in 2009, the first patients to take advantage of that were Canadians. And, these are people that have coverage, whatever the hell that means. They just don't have access to the care that they need. And it wasn't long before I received a call from a Canadian that was waiting in line for open heart surgery. He needed a bypass. Well, we don't do that at an outpatient surgery center, but I've got a friend who is the administrator at a physician-owned and controlled cardiac hospital here in Oklahoma City. So I called and I said, how much would you charge for a 3-vessel coronary artery bypass? And he said, Keith, I knew you were going to call me. And he said, I'm ready. Can you give me an hour? An hour later, he called me back and gave me the number, $34,000. So you think about, the naysayers. One of the first things they will say when a conversation like this happens in public is, what about open heart surgery?
Yes.
Well, it's $34,000, and $34,000 is a lot of money. It's less than a lot of cars. And as you just stated, it's less than 2 years of premium paid to Blue, United, Cigna, or Aetna for one of these horrible policies.
Totally.
Yeah, so
I don't have health insurance. I've paid for 2 total joint replacements in the past 3 years out of pocket, and I feel blessed and humbled to be able to have that option available to me and have it not bury me financially.
Yeah, you'll see more and more options available to you This is a very creepy time for the price gougers. They know that they are going to have to come to grips with this free market, price transparent movement. They know it's here. Just think about, I mean, I had a tinfoil hat on my head in 2009 when I posted this website, essentially creating a price marketplace for surgical services. And now it's federal law. Now, if you don't make prices available, then you've got a problem with the federal government. So,
yeah, but that's, you know, they're not complying with that, and it's like it's very, very difficult. It's not like your website where you go there and you press on a part of the body and it tells you what the price is. That's price transparency.
Price transparency. My point is the narrative has done a 180. Now, instead of the scrutiny I received back in 2009 with how crazy are you? What corners are you cutting? What in the world? How do you put this price on there? What's wrong with you?
Yes.
Now, if you, as a patient, as you have indicated you've already done, ask the question, how much? The scrutiny is on those who won't answer that question. So this movement is here. I think we're going to see all manner of attempts to not comply with it, and we're seeing that right now. I'm actually not a fan of the government getting involved in enforcing price transparency because they screw everything up that they touch. But
they should remove the protections that these people have. You know, I mean, we talked about this circumstance that the government has, but the not-for-profit hospitals have, but we didn't really talk about how that became that way. But what would happen if all of a sudden everybody was on the same playing field?
Well, you have to understand, Washington, D.C. is just simply an auction house where favors are sold. And most of these favors come in the form of regulations, obstacles, and hurdles that curtail the choice of the buyer. That is all to the advantage of those who do not want to compete. So the best public policy that anybody in Washington could possibly adopt or embrace is one of repeal of, just fill in the blank. Just start with the last laws that were passed and repeal them.
Yeah, go backwards from there. People have said, because, you know, Obamacare was a big debate online. People were talking about it a lot. And it's my angle is I want the government to back up until I tell them to stop, you know, which is all the way out. Just get all the way out. I want to buy a knee replacement the same way I buy a hamburger, you know.
And their story is always, you know, we've got to do this to keep everyone safe. And you know what? That's just not believable anymore.
That's right.
An industry insider told me 2 years ago in Nashville that the way that Big Pharma's support of Obamacare was ensured, because the Big Pharma was totally against Obamacare. And so, you know, the deal makers in the White House are trying to figure out, how do we secure the endorsement of Obamacare from Big Pharma? Basically, they told the Big Pharma folks that it looks like a lot of your profitable drugs are going generic, and your future is in these biologic infusable drugs. How about we just declare foreign biologics, those you have to compete with, unsafe, and give you a 20-year moratorium so that you have no competition from foreign pharmacy companies that make biologic drugs. And Big Pharma endorsed Obamacare. That's the kind of stuff that results in drugs that have to be infused in people here in the United States, costing $8,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 a month.
Oh yeah, it's insane.
That's where that comes from, and that's the federal government auctioning off these favors, and they need to not have that power, essentially.
So there is some promise, although I'm always dubious on these types of promises, that there is going to be a fair amount of bureaucratic deregulation in the upcoming Trump administration. What are you hoping for, and what could possibly the result be?
Well, I'm a rebel. I'm not a revolutionary. I think the current system is unfixable. I think it's a cesspool that is not cleanable. So I've quit accepting Medicare payments after I've been in practice 2 years, and have never accepted one since then. I've just walked away from any kind of dealing with government whatsoever. So
wow.
I think
that's a difficult thing in the case of a total joint replacement. Like 70 or 80% of those are Medicare, aren't they?
Yeah, and I would just, back in those days, I would just provide the anesthesia care free and not even send in a bill. So it was the most liberating thing I had ever done up to that point, was to walk away. So I don't think the current system is fixable. I think there will be some trimming around the edges, but politically, I don't think they can get away with messing around with Medicare. Politically, I don't think they can get away with curtailing the price gouging activities of the insurance carriers or the hospitals. I think there will be some trimming around the edges. My focus is on the creation of an alternative, that buyers can patronize rather than the old system. And then the old system just kind of withers away from.
You kill the beast by starvation.
That's right. And so I think that's a better approach. And so I'm more on the lookout for new laws and regulations that would curtail the growth of this alternative free market approach. And I don't think we will see any heavy-handed regulation in the next 4 years that would curtail the growth of a free market. But I have no faith in anyone in the federal government, and I'll be on the lookout for that.
Well, I really appreciate your time. Perhaps there's a part 2 in the mix here. I'm interviewing a number of free market physicians, and I'm going to. I'm hoping to interview the guy who did my hernia surgery. This was back in 2016, and I had a hernia, and I didn't know what to do. And I checked the local hospital system, and it was like 20 grand. And I found a guy in Maryland who did it for $1,900 out the door, you know? I flew in, and boom, I was out of there the next day, and it was a great deal, and I'm sold on the idea totally. So,
well, thanks for having me on your program.
Yeah. No problem. Let's do it again.
Sounds good.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.